Well, I think the pattern here is extremely obvious what's going on. We're getting set up for a global war. I think so. I know I like, man, I shouldn't laugh about that, haha, right? Anyway, if you look back in history, I could say I'm almost 60 years old, and I was lucky enough to have my dad, who was a working class man and worked very hard, send me to very high-end schools and with teachers that thought outside the box. So actually, I knew about the real causes of World War I and what was going on and how it was actually unnecessary for America to get involved and what the real purposes was. The League of Nations, that was one of the resulting. That was one of the goals of World War I. I knew about that when I was 14 years old. So you're talking about almost. You're talking about 55 years ago. I knew this. So a lot of people, they come on the scene with the internet and they find out some of these things. I've known about these things a long time, and I could probably discuss them for a gazillion years, but I just want to go over something very briefly. Basically, if you looked even back at World War II, the League of Nations was struck down by the Senate in the 20s because we did not become a member of it because they realized that the treaty-making power of the League of Nations could supersede the laws of the United States of America, so they balked at the thought and they backed down from it. Well, lo and behold, later on, World War II comes about. Actually, the elitists backed both sides of that war. They built up Adolf Hitler, they built up Stalin, and they set the stage for the Cold War and communism for decades to come. They actually set the stage for that. And if you look back, the United Nations organization has been on a drawing board since the 1930s. A lot of people thought it came about after World War II. No. Actually, as soon as World War II, as soon as the United States got involved in World War II, like within days after Pearl Harbor, they were already talking about the United Nations organization forces against the Axis forces. But they basically relabeled that the Allies. It later became under the UN flag when it was with the Korean War. But you notice what the result of that was, even though the United States had the power to make a united Korea under a free society like South Korea, communism got pushed. Actually, the major elitists in the world on both sides of the globe, actually it's coming from the Western, certain Western elitists actually are backing, have been pushing for communism. It's a type of globalism. They don't, use all these stupid words. They want control and they want to screw everybody over. So the way I see it is, what I see is clear as anything. What we got here is a game going. The population are getting, polarized on, either to go with the West or go with the East. To Vladimir Putin or to go with the Western leaders or whatever. Also, just like the polarization in political things, where you go with Obama or Romney, and I chose neither. I actually took Gary Johnson. I'm not a person that has to think any particular way, despite what anybody tells me, and I got a lot of heat from that from all kinds of people, because even people that supported Romney goes, "Why did you do that?" Well, whatever. So I threw my vote away. Correct. Whatever. Big deal. It's my vote, isn't it? Just like my free speech. But anyway, the thing is with this game that's coming up here, because I see it very clearly now. We had a lot of the nuclear officers fired recently, right? I'm laughing, but boy, that's suspect. Now, all of a sudden, the Cold War just comes on, like out of nowhere, right? What did they think what was going to happen? You think it was, in other words, I think this whole deal with Ukraine is a shrewd maneuver by the West and the East to get involved in a war. And the players are playing their games on both sides of the globe, and it's all towards having a massive disarmament will be the ultimate goal of all nations. All weapons under a global army, a global peacekeeping force. And out of the ashes comes out your global government, or whatever the hell you want to call it. So that's what I think is being set up. So I just have to tell you this. These truthers and stuff, they kind of make me sick because, first off, they side with Vladimir Putin. I don't side with Obama or Vladimir Putin. None of them. None of them. Actually, I realized what the law of the land should be across the globe is the Bill of Rights. The rights of individuals. And that is going to be the exact opposite of what is going to be allowed if they get their way. Because if you look at the United Nations, yeah, they got some rights, but you know what? The United Nations grants the rights. They don't recognize any damn thing. That's the United Nations actually is very close to the old Soviet Union. And even the design of the United Nations came from the Soviet Union. But after the United Nations, there's going to be something else. I'm saying I could see the writing on the wall with this deal. It's not going to be like this year. It's going to take, I don't know, it's probably not going to be really extremely far off, too, either. But if you look back, you know, I noticed a little bit of conspiracy history, but if you look back, World War I was perpetrated partly to push for the League of Nations. Globalism has been around for a long time. There's been a long-standing goal of elitists for certain elitists for a long time. World War II, and like I said, the United Nations organization was on the drawing board in the 30s. You know, I mean, you had like two camps there. You had like the Prescott Bush camp backing like basically the Nazis, and you had FDR backing the communists and stuff. You know, I'm going to tell you, both of them were evil. That's all there is to it. They're both screwed up, both of them. Some of the better politicians out there basically got silenced. You know, Huey Long, you know, another one. I believe that was who his name was. Another one that got silenced. And you know, this is what happens. This is what happens. So it's not going to be that easy to get things back to where they should be. If you look back during the 1800s when Andrew Jackson was going against Biddle with the Bank of the United States. Biddle was a very tough opponent, but you know the Americans actually knew what was going on, and the vast majority stuck to their convictions. And you know we got rid of a potential Federal Reserve from the early 1800s onward. But what's going to come out of the ashes is going to be a global financial system, and it looks like we're being set up for a. I'd say, you know, first off, Obama. If you know, I mean, I don't know if some people believe this, some people don't, but the guy's a 100% Manchurian candidate. He's owned from head to toe. Top insider Democrats say this too. He's actually not too popular with a lot of top insider Democrats too. But when he says something like this and he changes policy and he gets tough with Russia all of a sudden, you know, I'm saying it's not coming from him per se. It's coming from people that basically pulling his strings. And what's going on here is probably we got a setup coming up. And now I noticed that not very long ago, there's been a couple hundred top nuclear officers and people in the know that have been fired. And there's also been more nuclear disarmament on the United States. So it looks like there's going to be a war where it looks like it's going to be bad for both sides, which is the goal. Because then all the people from all across the world will accept a global dictatorship. I think that's what they got going here, man. I don't know. I'm putting this out because I say that, you know, not that I'm going to be able to change anything. You know, I'm only one person, but like for crying out loud, isn't it pretty obvious what's going on here? It's like the same pattern of World War I to World War II. And, you know, what actually comes out of it, it's like they talk peace, but what they're really about is control of everybody. That's really what they're about. And, you know, the one thing they would hate is, you know, the first... Let's just keep it simple. You know, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States as being the most powerful laws that they would hate that. They would hate that. That's a pretty good, you know, it's not that they have to grant that to us. That's our inherent rights. And actually one of the amendments states that we have more rights than not enumerated in the Bill of Rights. So it's like it really carte blanche. It lays out everything that's out there. That should be the global law of the land. So if, you know, what we need is actually not to be fighting East versus West. We need to be actually, the people need to be against elitists in all their respective countries because we're being set up like suckers. That's what I say is going on. You got to stick with principles over people. You stick with principles over people. That's the most important thing going. You don't worship anybody as a god. As you know, if they're the head of any country or whatever, you stick with principles over people. And when they violate those principles, they should be ousted. That's as simple as that.